Thank you all for coming out tonight. I'm Greg Harris. I'm the assistant curator here at the DePaul Museum. So we've got, what will hopefully be a great program set up for you tonight. We've got Ed Marszewski and Juan Chavez. We're going to have a conversation about Juan's work and some of the work that they've done together. I'm sure most of you know Juan is one of the leading forces in public art here in Chicago. He's
sorry, I'm not back. I'm not.
You're not?
No, not public art. I gave that up a long time.
Okay.
So we can talk about that.
But Juan, you've done commissions for the Chicago Library, the CTA,
right.
the Morgan Arboretum most recently. He's responsible for that large installation that's in the main gallery downstairs that's lovingly called by our students the Hobo Spaceship. Juan has also received the Richard H. Driehaus Award for Individual Artists and the Louis Comfort Tiffany Award. And he's also currently in a show at the Mexican Museum, the National Museum of Mexican Art. And Ed Marszewski is kind of the man about town in the Chicago art world. He's the founder and editor of London and Proximity magazines. He runs the Co-Prosperity Sphere and Maria's Packaged Goods and Bar down in Bridgeport. And he is also recently a brewer.
Oh yeah, we recently released this beer called The Chairman to commemorate 20 years of London magazine.
So a Renaissance man of sorts. So please welcome Ed Mar.
I clap for you.
Yeah. So Juan and I were trying to figure out what we were supposed to talk about here today, and we were going to talk a lot about shotguns, and some other sort of things. But I think it'd be interesting just to hear Juan explain how he started getting involved in the arts in general. I mean, I kind of know the story, but if you don't mind, why don't we just go through as a kind of history of Juan Chavez till today?
So we got from what point, where are we going to start?
Why don't we start off when you were a teenager? Or no, why don't we start off when you were living in Mexico?
I wasn't doing art.
You weren't doing art?
No, Mexico was a different sort of perspective of living, and my focus was not making art. My focus wasn't having fun and existing. Hopefully becoming a rancher or whatever not. Coming to Chicago essentially is what turned me into an artist.
Yeah, like how did you get here? Why did you come to Chicago first?
I was stuffed into a luggage.
You were
put in the back of a pickup truck,
mm-hmm.
So it wouldn't be noticed by immigration.
Mm-hmm.
Came here in '85 with my family, and sort of that's my, from coming from the perspective where I came from in Mexico, we had a lot of freedom as kids, so the amount of space that is presented by having that amount of freedom is what kind of subsequently became our focus, and became the focus of my mom looking for me to do something productive, in the city. So it was great. I started working in cultural centers when I was a teenager. So.
Now, it's kind of weird. Your mother, who isn't an artist, got you involved with cultural centers here in Chicago after she moved here from Mexico.
Yeah.
How the hell would she even know to do that? I mean, most parents don't even know how to bring their kids to a museum.
I guess my mom's just damn cool.
She's cool, right?
Right.
So she as a teenager, she brought you to what kind of cultural centers?
It wasn't a cultural, it was at a community center. Like the first art class that I took was at the Belvis, Ruben Belvis, Puerto Rican.
Yeah, the Puerto Rican
community center.
Center.
Yeah, and I did some. That was my first initial encounter with art. Mm-hmm. I was to make wood lino cuts and do prints, and that's how I sort of got started. And from then, I started going into art programs at school. That one thing was another. I got involved with mural painting.
Well, how did you even get involved in that kind of like public arts? Mural painting? Was it through the center?
No, it's like,
No,
my involvement was mostly skateboarding. That was like, captivated my...
So you were a skater too?
Yeah, that's what captivated most of my creative endeavors with skateboarding. Mm-hmm. And because of that, there was all these like creative outlets that were developing through school, and through the teachers realizing that I had some talent, pushing me in different directions, to get involved with any sort of city program that existed in the city at that time. So I started making connections with public arts sector. and which you know, ended up getting a full ride to school at the institute at that time.
Through that work you did on
Through
the
the work,
streets
you know,
as
it's
a
like
kid.
well, not necessarily, you know, I was working with, you know, it was called, wasn't Mayor Daley at that time, I think it was Byrne, what was her name?
There was a Mayor Byrne.
Mayor Byrne, but it was at that time that I was involved in this, like, some summer classes, and early college program courses that I was taking at the Art Institute, and I ended up going to school and creating a portfolio through that process. And then ended up being that I got into school, and not finishing school is what also pushed me into making art.
Well, how was school back then? You're a Mexican kid. Didn't go to like where'd you go to high school?
I went to high school at Sen.
So you went to Sen, you're from Chicago, going to school at the Art Institute, hanging out with kids from all over the world. What was that experience? Like, not a big deal? Because you're already skating and meeting freaks from all over the world anyway, right?
I think it was like at that time, it was
Well,
mostly,
did you think our kids were lame?
No, I didn't think so. It was a great time. All we did is do acid, smoke pot, and skateboard.
Yeah.
You know? So it was like, art was just like the second thing.
You made art while after you were coming down, or while you were high?
During, or whatever.
Yeah.
It's just part of like the existence of, you know, being an art.
I can't see who's smiling out here, but I know there are a lot of drug users out here.
It's art school.
Majority of kids.
So, I mean, that took a different toll. I think all the people, we actually now laugh because we are, some of the people that I went to art school with, I'm still friends with. And we call ourselves the dropout group.
Because you all dropped out of SAC.
For different reasons, obviously. One of them,
Yeah.
you know, one of them was Thor. Thor
Yeah.
and I went to school together.
Holy shit, I didn't know that.
So,
Thor's another incredible artist.
that's how I know Thor.
Well, this is interesting because you're talking about people who I think of today as part of a group of people who created this different scene in Chicago. Thor is one of them, of
Thor was
course.
one of them. And then from meeting Thor, I also met a bunch of graffiti artists. And that also like a big influence in my life. But most of it has been, you know, just really pushing myself out there to be in the art world. So I was part of the work in the Mexican Museum for a while. As an intern in the early 90s with the promise that I would go back to school. And I could never go back to school after a while. You know, I could never afford to go back to school.
But also, what's the point? I mean, did you need a degree? Did you want to teach?
You can always proclaim yourself as an artist.
Yeah, right?
That's the thing.
I think maybe,
As long as you put your time in.
yeah, you have to do a lot of work.
Yeah.
Well, I think around this time is when I started seeing your work on the streets of Chicago. I didn't even know who the hell this guy was. I'm like, oh, that's pretty cool. That's the kick-ass piece over here.
What was the first piece that you saw?
It was a division. I think it was it's on Chicago and Damon.
Oh, that.
In the window, in the doorway.
That's when I started really breaking out. Prior to that, I was doing I put in 10 years in public art jail.
Yeah, you were in public art jail.
Yeah, for 10 years.
You're talking about the 80s to the mid-90s.
80s to, yeah, no, well, actually the late 90s, early.
Shit, so we are old. I am an old man.
Yeah.
You are an old man. So we're skipping 10 years here. So at that time, you started working with public art group, right?
I got involved in public art.
This is after the 80s.
Yeah, it was early not when it was after the 80s. In the 80s, I was still in high school.
Yeah.
In the
This is
90s,
90 something.
like in the 90s, I got involved painting murals, and it was a way for me to like really learn how to paint better, and really get involved. I really liked that, you know, that you could work outside, that the work was really immediate and it was honest. You know, like all the veils were fucking gone.
Yeah.
You know, that you were really out there and people were just like commenting on your work and your process. And
Immediate
the entire process was open and it was amazing, right? But I also found it that at the same time, it created a level of constraint. That's why I call it public art jail.
Yeah.
You know, like there's
In
this,
terms of your content.
well, content, and also the physical form of the work. You better answer that.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Like you can do this interview with the phone in the other ear, can't you?
Jesus Christ. Let me just turn this phone on. I think the phone got buried in the jacket with the hole in the pocket. Okay, let me just turn this off. Sorry. But yeah, let's go back to this about the content. You said you had handcuffs for the public art realm because you were not censored,
No, I
It
think
wasn't
no,
content, but it was
no,
what?
it's a couple of things. There's one thing, there's like, public art went from something that was really sort of progressive for me in terms of pushing boundaries in the media, but never really in the content. It was hard to push boundaries in the content because you were dealing with a lot of issues. They're public issues and social issues. So you can be really proactive, you can really be almost rebellious with it. But it's not well received, and I was really not into that as much as I was into just creating larger objects and larger pieces, right?
Wait a minute, Juan. What the fuck are you talking about? You're making public art, you're working on walls, you have unlimited space. How much larger can you go here?
Larger.
Seriously?
Because I was not thinking of the physical form as much as I was also thinking of the process that it takes to make a piece of work, right? So how much involvement do you take? I mean, they use the maker, and that's when I started freaking out. And I'm not just the maker of somebody else's message. I really want to, extend myself from it. And I put in, like 10 years doing projects where I learned how to make mosaics, I learned how to paint, I learned how to,
manage projects, come up with budgets.
the large projects.
Schmooze with officials, deal with people.
But to the point where I lost it.
You're just tired of it. It's like,
And then that's what you let me when I was
Yeah.
doing that stuff on the streets. I was
Yeah.
like, fuck all this, I'm just going to
do whatever I want to do.
Yeah, do whatever I want to do, and started doing these projects where I would just collect found materials and create these three-dimensional collages that were designated to go on the street. Sort of like, influenced by graffiti writers that, they can go out and put up their name or whatever. I would just go out and put up the structures.
Right.
In abandoned
Now,
buildings.
people today don't even realize that that's kind of a really massive shift in how people look at street art.
Right.
I mean, you look at street art today, there's such a wide assortment of approaches and media being used, from straight paint to stenciling, to wheat pasting, to cutouts, to these three-dimensional collages. It's like you take it for granted now, which is great, because there's people like Juan and people all over the world who actually started creating these kind of collages or installations on the street, something beyond what graffiti was known as. And they call it street art, and they have all kinds of shitty names for it.
Well, street art is probably the worst name for it. But,
yeah.
Because I never thought it was like...
You didn't even think of it as street art. Here's the thing, like, these people didn't even know they were part of this broader movement either. I doubt you knew that you were part of this global movement. Because even then, the internet wasn't as like, whatever, attached to us.
I remember submitting some stuff for the Worcester Collective and they turned me down.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, I guess I'm not street art then.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's also at the same time where I was like, making a lot, my work that I was doing on the streets kept expanding. I wasn't doing
It was exterior decorating in some ways.
It was
right?
like the time that it took to make one of these pieces. It took the comfort that knowing that I had like years of experience of working outside. So to me, it's like I had this attitude, this format that you can work outside, and seeing completely like you're supposed to be there, legit, right? And so I was doing these projects that were like 8 hours, take 10 hours to construct it, but completely without permission. I was doing this stuff that was just because I wanted, because I could push that boundary. Right? So my work was not like, putting a wheat paste up or putting a sticker or your name up. It was really like, elaborate installations that were going outside. They would have like, premeditated thought and ideas to be able to be.
Yeah, you did site surveys. You would check out what you want to do. You take measurements, know what you would do with the found objects and things you have.
And then people started saying, oh, this is cool.
Let's start doing this.
Let's do this guy, give this guy an award. And I was like, holy shit, I'm on the right path.
Yeah, that's cool. That's people even recognize that there is value in what you're doing. Because oftentimes some of the officials behind all these organizations are pretty much caught up into what's in the magazines in front of them, which already have dated kind of like material in terms of like promoting artists that are already well known. Sorry I didn't say that. It's true.
Thanks.
So what I also was cool is you started hanging out with Michael Genovese and Cody, right? It's when you guys started collaborating.
Yeah, we did a project, and it was like, it was the Chris Silva's idea.
And Chris Silva, shit. Sorry.
Chris Silva's idea is like to do this project called the Love Mural, and I think it was like maybe like 50 people participated on it.
Mm-hmm.
But it was like this idea that you're going to take a mural and transform this whole entire gallery, right? And you know, after it was all done, I was complaining, you know, it's like, why do we have to have so many people? Why do you have to have so many voices? Why can't you create a small little group of 4 collaborators? And then we did that project it was Cody Hudson, my Genovese.
Can we stop here for a second?
Yeah.
Why? Because you knew it was a clusterfuck to deal with 50 people, right?
Well, yeah, and then there's no visual control.
Yeah, there's no way of making sure that the piece overall becomes something interesting. There's something to be said about experimentation and doing this kind of.
But the thing with collaborations, they're you know, that make them for them to be successful is that, you know, that you have to be really respectful and be able to be the kind of person that can creatively be witty and be able to turn in a dime. Like, you know, like
on the spot.
On the spot. So it's like this reaction that happens with collaboration. Like, you know, if you do something, my job to do something with you is kind of like music. You know, it's like that I have to vibe with it. Like, so whatever my creative flow is, I'm gonna be like, yeah, cool, that's cool. I respect what you did. I'm gonna do this. And you know, you can't get pissed off about that.
Right. And some people do.
Well, yeah.
You know, some people.
Yeah.
Or they don't even understand the concept.
Right. So I mean.
So that led to you saying, why don't we just work together and start doing something?
Let's do this, and you know, it was like, and it was pretty amazing. I mean, the whole premise of the exhibition is that we collaborated on this installation, really transformed 3,000 square feet of space at Open-End Gallery.
I heard that.
With the premise that everything that came out of that gallery was going to be on the street.
Now, Open-End Gallery was one of these interesting spaces in the early 2000s that was Fulton and Damon. It had 30-foot high ceilings. It was probably a 4,000 square foot space, right? And they did really interesting musical programming there and art shows. Sometimes it'd be a mix. This particular exhibition was, there were 4 different sections of the space divided up by 4 artists. Juan actually created a ship, a giant boat inside of a gallery that I have no idea how he got it out there, but he's the master of assembling his pieces so they're portable. Juan did a structure, everyone did a structure of sorts, or did some work on the wall. And it was, in a way, I don't even want to bring up Beautiful Losers, that whole movement from New York or whatever.
It was kind of like that.
But in a way, it was
kind of
Chicago's vibe.
Right.
It was Chicago's version of a Beautiful Losers type of show, with some of the most, you know, incredible, whatever, emerging mid-career artists who were doing innovative stuff. And at that time, too, there was a lot of great energy in Chicago with people doing stuff on the street and in the gallery. And in fact, by this time, you're like, whatever, you do tons of stuff in the street anyways. This show was a way to show like, well, we can make really beautiful objects that have a lot of different uses and purposes. So, for example, bands were playing on your piece, right?
Yeah, but that's a whole other, you know, it's like the adaptation of that. Like, you know, that space, because it was a multi-use space. It was not just like an exhibition space. It was a print shop.
Yeah.
And it was also
live music venue.
Live music venue, exactly. So that's the nature for that where that piece came out of. Like, you know, that both pieces, because we had to sort of adapt to the uses of the space to really think about that. You know, and I said, well, I just want to build a stage.
Yeah.
I built a boat. Or not realizing that was going to be like the progression of my work. Like that was what my work
was going to integrate all these different forms of
all these different forms
yeah.
and like the direction of where my work was going to be focused for the next 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's that kind of experimentation with a group of people when you sit around hanging out, drinking beers. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if you still smoke weed then, but you know, you learn a lot and you experiment, and there's all kinds of different directions that come out of that experimentation. Right. But that show was super important, I think, for Chicago. And you know, at that time, Westtown and Wicker Park was actually somewhere you could still live in. You know what I mean? And tolerate human beings.
Drunken,
you know what I mean? It wasn't a big fraternity, sorority, Disney park for assholes, as it is today. It was actually cool. You could walk around. I'd bump into Juan. I'd go to the coffee shop and see Cody. I'd see some other person. The proximity back then allowed you to engage with so many beautiful, talented people everywhere you went. Wherever you walked, you'd bump into someone who actually made shit happen. And it was a really wonderful time. The last time that happened was in the mid-90s for me, being the older guy here. But that was a great time, you know? And it's a shame that space is gone. Well, of course, other spaces replace those spaces, but
Your space is then great.
yeah, my
It's in a
space,
similar way.
yeah, which is like a reaction towards like ephemeral spaces, and temporary spaces, and gentrification. You're always going to be moved out of your space. You're always going to be moved out of whatever the hell you're renting, because you'll never be able to afford it. Because eventually, someone will want to put a Starbucks there.
We need a Starbucks there.
So after that, that's right. There's probably going to be a Starbucks in that building. And there should be, if anyone wants to open a Starbucks in Bridgeport, come see me. All right? I got a great building for you. But one after that, you guys started doing some more collaborative shows. You lost Juan, because Chris, because Chris went to move to Puerto Rico. He freaked out, right?
Well, yeah, I think we did a couple of projects. We did one project in Copenhagen.
That's right. Which is now, explain Copenhagen. Why? Now, Copenhagen, when he says Copenhagen, that actually means something. Copenhagen at that point was a center for really great social art projects. It still is. Chicago is known for being a great public art, social art, activist art center for the world. Truly, the globe looks at Chicago's output as some of the most important work in the planet. Copenhagen was one of those poles and hubs at that time for interactive projects using interdisciplinary, weird kind of street, kind of social art stuff with public art.
It was at that point is when sort of like the work for all of us sort of became like this, ecological awareness. Like, like we were like,
you were pegged as these guys recycling materials.
All of a sudden we get there and we're like, oh, you guys use recycled materials. You guys, work from the trash. And we're like, yeah, but we never really thought about it that way.
Yeah. But they were probably selected. They didn't even know they were selected to work there because of that, probably.
Right. So, but, it was great. It was a great experience. But that's when I think, there was that project, and it was amazing working there. But and there was the other project in Philadelphia. That sort of like the last two collaborations.
Yeah.
I'd say from what you call the dream team.
Yeah, that was my dream team.
Yeah.
I'd always beg them to do stuff for me.
That will never happen again, I don't think.
No, it will happen.
You think?
Oh yeah, Chris is in town.
Chris is
Fly
in town.
Genovese up, the fucker.
He doesn't want to do it.
We'll get him here. It will happen. And when it happens, you better be there, you guys. All right. Well, the interesting thing is, most people leave Chicago, right? Like we talk about the dream team. Genovese went to Miami. Don't know why, except it's beautiful down there. It's beaches, weather's good. And there's also a market there. There's also a scene for commercial artists to kind of work together with certain individuals down there to help their career get some attention. Chris went to Puerto Rico and started freaking out on some ecological stuff.
Well, he went down there.
And he's doing work and he's making music. That's right. And he's a pretty good rapper.
He is pretty good.
He's a very talented cat.
Yeah.
Cody is still in Chicago, and Juan's also in Chicago. And my thought is like a lot of people who are pursuing some sort of career in the commercial art realm feel like they hit a brick wall here in Chicago and they have to split. And they move to New York, they move to LA. Maybe something will happen. Most likely not. To be one of these famous kind of commercial artists, it's like winning a lottery ticket that you buy at Jewel Osco over here. In my opinion, there are a lot of incredibly talented artists out there who are experts at their craft, are geniuses, but for some reason or another they're not able to get an invitation to the Whitney or get a Treehouse Foundation Awards, etc. And I don't know why, but it's about chance in some ways. But it's also about your ability to work super hard and not give a shit. And you just do your work and stay true to your vision. Juan and Cody are two individuals that I know, and Deborah Stratton, who are able to do whatever the hell they want because they work really hard and people respect them for that stuff. But I wonder why you stayed here. Like you could have just moved back to Mexico. You could do. You probably could move. Yeah, you can do whatever the hell you want to do. Like why are you still here? Why did you stay and start making work here?
I like Chicago. Yeah, I like Chicago because I think there's this mental space. If I were to move to New York, I think it would have been a great opportunity for work, but at the same time, it would have been overwhelming. I think that I have this personal space that I'd like to keep, and I think New York would encroach on that personal space. New York's always there. New York's like always going to be New York. So I can always go there.
Well,
New York's not that far.
My argument has been because of this kind of global internet, because of this kind of availability of exchange of ideas via the internet, or because of our ability to fly somewhere, we have these networks of people all over. You could be based anywhere. You could be based in Peoria
Right.
and still do whatever the hell you want.
Exactly.
Thor's in the middle of the woods
Right.
in Michigan, right? But yeah, I mean, that's why I always argue to people who want to split Chicago, but it's like, I'm really selfish. I mean, I just want Chicago to be the most amazing place on earth. So I get really upset when someone like Juan will leave. If Juan were to leave, I'd be really pissed off at him and I'd burn his house down. You know what I mean? Before you could sell it.
Maybe collect the insurance money.
That's right, that's a good idea. Oh, that's a new opportunity. Anyone needs a house burn, just call me. Give me 10% of your insurance, no problem. But I'm really glad you stayed, Juan. Because you stayed too, you also started working on some incredible projects that relate to what happened in 2004, 3 at the Open End Gallery. You started making these super large scale, freaked out installations, right? I mean, the one that comes to mind right now is the speaker box thing that what we did at the Hyde Park. You did at the Hyde Park Art Center, right? Why did these things happen? Is it because the opportunities came to you, or did you make these spaces and people say, look, this is what I want to do, you need to make it happen? I mean, why did
the speaker project was like the first one to sort of set everything up. Because...
Well, let me backtrack here for a second. You're an artist in Chicago, and you know about all the gatekeepers here in Chicago, and you know how lame it is here in Chicago sometimes. You know how there's a very limited commercial market. You know there's a very limited collector group that'll actually purchase stuff in Chicago, right? You have to be on the hustle for every representation in this kind of commercial realm, as well as be able to get commissions to do projects, right? And you have to reach a stature of sorts in Chicago in which you are able to say, okay, Mrs. Jones, what do you know, whatever, potential collector or potential gallerist. Well, how do you prove that you're like the shit? How are you able to say that you are a person that's worth investing in, worth showing? Is that a struggle or is it a problem? Do you get it?
I've never really worried too much about that. I just, I do what I do.
Yeah.
People like it, people like it.
Well,
that's my
aren't you just fucking cool?
Well, I'm not
You're just fucking cool,
I
guys.
just, what am I going to do? Try to force somebody to buy my stuff? I think it's just strange.
Well, there are some people who do that.
I know. Some
Right.
people do that. That's just
Aren't there?
style. Yeah.
Right, you're right. So why not? You still want to be that guy.
I just want to do that.
Yeah.
The projects that I do them because I'm interested.
And also, even if it does suck here sometimes for you, you don't say it sucks here. You don't bitch and complain and moan like some people do here. The people who bitch and complain and moan can all fuck off. It's like if you can't get people to pay attention to your work, if no one's buying your fucking charcoal painting for $50,000, it's because your work sucks. And maybe you should just move on and try something else. And that's important to know. Like when no one pays attention to you, change your fucking work. Do something else. Leave. Try a different medium. It's not because Chicago sucks. It is probably you.
And my experience has always been that. If someone likes it in Chicago, someone's going to like it in New York, someone's going to like it anywhere else.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
Right. But, so you never worry about that stuff. So anyways, we want to, I
worry more about,
I have no clue.
I worry more about how does it all going to work.
How will the piece work?
Right, because in all the projects that I've been able to develop more and more, are more sort of interconnected little networks of things.
Related projects.
Yeah, I'm trying to create more of a, an experience, not so much the installations. The installation is just like a byproduct of the experience, So like, to me, it's more interesting to me, like creating sort of networks with people. It's kind of similarly how I was working with making community-based public art, like we're working with these people who are like, anti-guns or, anti-gentrification. There's some really interesting resources that happen because of those networks. And I think this works in any sort of like situation, social situation, right? Whether it be a small town, whether it be like, the middle of nowhere, or it's a city. There's some really interesting factors that exist and really interesting, formats. And I'm talking about visual formats and practices that could be developed from those experiences. So I'm worried more like, how is this going to be, this content is going to be stronger? I'm not worried about like, who's going to fucking buy it, who's going to receive it. I'm more worried about like how strong the content is going to be.
Well, for a speaker box project, for example, there are musicians programming performance.
Yeah, that was like, it's a direct correlation to that piece that we did in 2005 at the Open End space. Right? Because the connections that I made there were with Pete Tolson from the Empty Bottle, right? And he was like, he liked the project so much because there was this thing, like he can tell a band that's coming from like Germany or something and say like, hey, you want to play this like, they gave like, you'll be playing on top of a boat, right? So I'm like, I switched that idea around because there's like something really interesting that happened within that space, right? And I'm talking about just like my particular, interest. When I looked at that space and I looked at what's happening with the interaction of the piece, I really like, oh shit, it's like, this is like, a lure. This is like the Pied Piper. Like all these people are just like freaking out
flocking to this piece.
Around this. It's not just the piece; it's the interaction that it was creating. It's the whole environment. It was like unveiling the whole system of the museum aesthetics. And like it's like you can touch it, you can interact with it, you can participate. You don't. It's like completely changing the rules of engaging with an object of how you view art. And I was really excited about that. So like the speaker project was like, that's how do I do this again? And thinking about it, like kind of like the way that we interact with, with like an ice cream truck in the summer. Like you get people out of their houses, for some cones or whatever, and then at the same time they're like being annoyed by the music, and there's like these different levels of participation that existed on. At the same time, that it's creating all these different networks. I can't even say the word, like creating these different networks with the piece itself. So the object doesn't become an object anymore, it becomes an experience, becomes, some sort of event that you went to, and it brings people out of the woodwork. So that was like, that's what I presented to the Hyde Park Art Center. They were like, yes, that's what we want to do. Like, so it was cool, and that from then on, it just became a whole different set of projects that I wanted to do, like, investigate more in forms. Like some of the things I still consider, like some of my projects are just more, formal investigations of other projects that I want to do,
Well, another project at the Hyde Park Art Center was definitely an unusual project in terms of like dealing with people's expectations or desires or needs for access. And that was at that recent party. What was it, last year?
Oh.
Do you want to talk about that?
Sure.
Yeah. He's really all over the place in terms of some of the... Well, you can do whatever
you
want.
That was
you
a
can do whatever you want.
That was a collaboration. I can't take all the credit.
No, it's collaboration, but I'm really pissed off at you that you did not let me help manage that situation.
Next time.
Yeah.
But
why don't you explain what that was, Juan? The special evening at the Hyde Park Art Center.
It was the first time.
It was. What was the event? It's like a big event.
They did it this year, the second year doing it. It's called, Mischief Night.
Yeah, Mischief Night.
And they asked
fundraiser
if I would do a project, and I took it seriously. They said, you want to be mischievous?
You want mischief? You really want mischief?
Right.
You really want to do something naughty?
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm like, okay. And they're like, well, what are you going to do? It's like, I can't tell you. If I tell you, it will never happen.
You will not let it happen.
Right.
Yeah.
So we set up...
So you basically explained to them that I'm going to do something that you would not allow to have happen here if you know what it was.
Right. And that's the kind of place they are.
Yeah.
But they can do that. They're flexible to do that. Although they'll never do this again, then they're from...
Yeah. So they're like, okay, Juan, you can do this thing that we're not supposed to know about.
Right. But then when they actually realized that, it was really ambitious on our part. We wanted to have, this entire different thing. We wanted to have, mischievous things like, cockfights.
Cockfighting, yeah.
Yeah, not knowing that it's like, well, for one, we knew that it was taboo, but who cares about chickens? It was kind of like playing.
I like to eat them.
Right, it's like a really fine line that you can sort of create in terms of what is considered mischievous and what not. So like we set up a series of events that would happen within this room. Not all of them were fully developed, some of them were great. Not only that, chickens fall asleep, so you can have a cockfight.
No, they're sleeping.
They're sleeping. They want to go.
Yeah, they want to go to sleep.
So that wasn't going to work, right?
You can't just
put a
cattle prod and chicken to make them.
But we did have the opportunity to make, we hired a stripper because that's borderline. That's borderline.
You created a stage with a stripper pole.
Right.
Yeah.
But
you created an entire nightclub in black with really awesome props.
Right.
A poker table.
poker table.
A DJ booth.
DJ set, yes.
Yeah.
A bar.
A bar.
An open
With
bar.
Hornswogglers,
Yes.
who are the famous Hornswoggler
Right.
cocktail artists.
We actually had illegal narcotic drugs there.
There were drugs there,
And
lots
Four
of
Loko.
booze, and Four Loko,
Yeah.
which ran out really quickly.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't have any of that.
Which was illegal at the time. But the thing is, this party, there was a security guard, and no one was allowed in. Nobody would be allowed into this room unless you knew how to get into places like this where you're not supposed to get in. So a lot of hipster kids showed up, artists, and of course then the patrons of the Hyde Park artists who got in there.
Who couldn't get in at first.
Who couldn't get in first, but like the donors, etc., were able to get in. So all the hot shots.
I mean, they were able to get in, but it was a hard time.
They had a
The
hard
whole
time.
idea is that it doesn't matter who you are, you still have to abide by this
Arbitrary doormats. Yeah.
law. I mean, it's like, speakeasy law, whatever. You don't say
Yeah.
anything. You don't, it's the way you are, the way you participate, that's the way you get in.
So the point was to help, is to show them how maybe other people feel about entering into their worlds as well, in some ways.
I don't know about that.
Who knows what?
That's a lot, putting a lot of things.
All I know is that there were not enough drugs in that party, and I'm really upset about that.
It was fun. It was a lot of fun.
But that was a
they'll
great
never
fun
do it
project.
again.
Never do it again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They'll never do it again.
But that is completely like.
Maybe this museum will let me do it again.
Well, this
Right.
place is perfect for it. This was a perfect place for an event like Here's One. People would never suspect anything so exciting and titillating happened here.
Well, I mean, we thought it was great. We thought it was great because it was real visceral. We're trying to recreate the visceral experience that it only exists if you go out into the real world.
Right. Like it was inspired by you going to some really strange places.
Well, there was like, well, yeah. I mean, we've been to places where like they just couldn't believe that existed, and couldn't believe that existence was so real. Like as much as it was like undermining and creating but it was real. It was real. It was fucking real. Like going to in Philadelphia, going to a speakeasy, there was like it was insane. Like seeing this stripper swing around this pole, like almost kicking people in the head. Where she had a black eye, it was so symbolic. It was like what happened here? Why does she have a black eye? Why is this such a confined space existing within the city where you can do anything you want anyways?
Yeah.
So why is it Philly? And what was Philly was just Chicago. I'm sure it happens here, but but what is that reality that exists? And try to explore that reality. How can we recreate this? Isn't that cool to try to recreate something like that? So it was it was a really ambitious project that basically we planned it for I think it was 4 months for a 2-hour event.
Yeah. It lasted a lot longer.
Well, yeah, but it was the whole concept was it was going to be 2 hours and that's it.
Yeah.
And we were willing to go on this entire
Really
length,
extreme
for these 2
Great
hours.
underground nightclub. Yeah.
Right.
For 2 hours.
Right. So
That's
made it
pretty
great.
rad. It's pretty rad. If you hear about it, if some of your students are here, you might stay in contact with Juan. Make sure you're on his email list or on his phone, and he might text you about his next secret underground party that he's doing.
Well, that would be another thing to do soon. But I don't have any of those planned.
Yeah, it's okay. There's time. But now recently, in fact, you guys if you think we're skipping over stuff or you think something's up, feel free to ask questions at any time or ask whatever, don't let me hog this conversation, even though that's why I'm probably here for. But if you have any questions or you have any questions about what we're talking about, need some clarification, please chime in whenever. Just open your mouth, don't raise your hand. The interesting thing about what's happening now is that you've talked about this. Well, here's a weird thing. So, Juan lives in near McKinley. I live in Bridgeport. He picked me up. Right? We're neighbors, basically. He picked me up. We're taking the L. I'm driving down. We're taking the orange line to the red line. And I'm walking out the red line. There's Juan's incredibly giant tile mosaic mural inside the station over at, what the hell is it?
Roosevelt Station.
Roosevelt Street. Have you guys seen that? Has anyone seen that Roosevelt mural?
Where is the station? It's in the transport zone.
On the tile when you go down. You should check it out. And I'm just going holy shit, dude. Wow. It's I had no idea that it was. First off, the approach, the subject matter, the aesthetics of it are completely different than what I'm usually used to, in a way, right? But then you're I'm on the train with Juan. I'm like, well, Juan's been on this train a million times, probably doing all kinds of illegal shit to this train. Didn't you also do installations in the train?
No, I've never done that.
You didn't do that with Cody?
No, I mean, that was, I mean, I never call that an installation. Putting shit up on those, like, design,
Whatever,
it's not installation. Right?
It is.
It's like, it's advertising.
Formally,
You just look at
formally
it.
an installation. So you've intervened on the train.
Yeah, I don't even remember what I did. That's how impressive it was in my mind.
But the thing is, like, I'm hanging out with him for 15 minutes on the fucking train. I realize that this is I'm inhabiting like Juan Chavez's world of where he does work in the fucking train station. I can look outside this train, outside the window. There's an installation or a mural he's done. It's like your footprint is all over the place in the city, and it's really kind of cool that you can do that. You know, and I think your friend Mr. Elder wanted maybe you to maybe give some sort of like props to this public art universe. And I'm wondering what would your advice be to kids or anybody who wants to get involved in the public art kind of like scene here in Chicago? Because that's kind of important.
Yeah, I mean,
because it's a way of like.
I feel like I'm kind of too bitter to talk about.
I know you are. I know that you are. But so give some really advice from a bitter minded cholo who was wrong by the you know.
I wasn't wrong. No, I was never wrong. I was just, you know, it's like, it's a personal quest. It's like when I'm sure you've done things yourself that you're like, you know, this is not what I really wanted to do, but I'm trying to figure it out, and I'm trying to learn from what I'm doing, you know, like trying to find my place. And that's where I was with public art. I'm not saying that it was a horrible experience. Honestly, I was there for 10 years and I loved it, you know.
Yeah.
And I loved it. I wouldn't have done it if I didn't like it.
Yeah.
I think it was just like, you know, like I felt like I was in, you know, like it was a migratory bird that got my wings split for a while, you know, like, you know, because I was on this like path of creating these objects and creating these pieces of work that were just like, you know, limiting in the accessibility to them, although physically they were everywhere. They're very open-minded and but that openness also creates a restriction. And to me, that restriction was not a restriction that I wanted to have in my creativity. You know, like in my process of making, I wanted to be more free. I mean, I'm more interested in, you know, contemporary ideas. I'm not interested in these ideas that become, you know,
channeling efforts of like community groups.
Oh, community group, yeah. And I was like, I wanted a personal. It wasn't a personal quest. So that's what you know. If it sounds bitter, that's what it is. But you know, in terms of public art, I think it's a great medium,
okay.
Right? But like anything else, you know, if it was music, you know, you want to play smooth jazz and you play smooth jazz. You know, if you're happy with it, go for it. You know, if you want to experiment something else, then experiment something else. In public art, to me, I think one of the things that made it interesting, right, is the fact that if you have new ideas, they're well embraced, right? If you look at everything that's going on in public art, usually they have to be this idea of permanence, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of permanence kind of limits the amount of work that you can do with it. Automatically. You have like, you know, everything has to be permanent. And not a lot of people think permanent materials and permanent forms, right? So you have to, you know, either, if you're a person that does a drawing or does anything else, you gotta find a form that your work translates to a permanent level, right? Everything could be fabricated.
And that's where your source of liberty came from. This is goes to create something permanent.
Well, not necessarily to me. I've always been very versatile in thinking like, well, how do I make this happen? How do I make this work, right? But that's one of the things. Like, you have to be very resourceful about that in public art. If you want to create like a really sharp image, a really, you know, great looking work, a newer form of looking work in public art, you know, then you really have to be versatile. You know, like versatile in terms of like, there's a lot of fabricators out there, right? And when you're managing like $500,000 budget or, you know, $1 million budget, then you're gonna have fabricators coming at you from everywhere.
Oh yeah.
You know, and so it's like, it's really interesting, like the process that exists out there to create this work. Sort of like you're almost working with the industry, right? But you have to be able to figure out what that look is. I mean, some people come out to you with like brochures, this is what we do, this is beautiful glass blocks that we do, this is metal that we do, this is process.
There's a whole industry that caters towards the needs of artists working on public commissions.
Right, exactly. So that's like, you know,
it's almost like a prefabricated kind of like bureaucracy, corporate kind of like.
And when you look at all the work, that it reads through it. So
it's oh, that guy did that. Oh, obviously he used that.
I can tell you when I go around, I can tell you
like
what mosaic group in Germany, what mosaic group in Italy, what mosaic group had their hands on this and fabricated. So to me, that was a little limiting. Although the budgets are amazing, they make good money, you know, but it was not something that I wanted to create.
Yeah.
You know, I wanted to have my hands in the work. I wanted to be able to be the person that builds my work. You know, I can have it work for me, but I still like, you know, like I still develop my own language.
Would you say that
I don't want to buy a language. I want to develop my own.
So you're saying your advice would be to someone like, look, if you're getting involved in this, know that there are limitations to where you can go. Know that if you have a personal vision, that it can be realized, but not maybe to the fullest extent.
If there is a vision that you want to go in, then by all means go for it.
Yeah.
You know, but if it's something that you're trying to pursue because you're trying to create interesting work, it's a very limited way to create interesting work.
I mean, my thought is that people involved in the public arts scene, there are people doing some tremendous work with like community groups or community organizations or doing stuff.
That's one way.
But there's other people who actually see it as like it's like their job.
It's a business.
It's a business.
It's a business.
It truly
It's an industry.
It's an
And
industry.
it's like everything.
It has nothing to do with art
everything you
anymore.
see in
It's a
train
job.
stations
Yeah.
and airports and parks. I mean, there's different formats for everything. Like sometimes when you see like parks, in like city we have collections.
Yeah.
You know, collections of work. And they just buy one straight up.
And violence, cultural.
Right. Like, you know, a Stargate or whatever.
Yeah.
This guy, what is it called? The beam, like.
Yeah, the beam.
Yeah. Like that's just a purchase object. It's a commission object for Chicago, but it's not necessarily like a commission.
No, it's existed, pre-existing.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So it's just that's a whole different process. Then you have like process of competition. The process of competition that exists, and those exist in anything that is at least for our programs, and there is also you know, straight up commissions come from competitions through any public work for the city. Like, you know, you mentioned some of the public art stuff that I did, and all those things were competition. You have to compete with another artist to be able to get this commission.
Hundreds, if not sometimes thousands, depending. And nowadays, because of the economy,
right,
a lot more than usual.
I haven't even tried.
Yeah.
Honestly,
It's
I
insane.
still have, like, my email's still there with all these groups where I used to participate, and emails come in all the time. And I can't even look at it.
Yeah.
Like, I'm just like,
You know,
I'm overwhelmed by this already. And another, like, you know,
all right.
they're good budgets anyway, so.
You know what, I'm sorry I segued into that, but I just really wanted to get your official take on that, because I want people to know what your feelings are. Because I remember you on the Public Arts Advisory Board for the mayor.
And it's a good man.
Right. And I remember that I was involved in some, I don't even know what was I doing? I was part of something that Paul Klein was organizing, kind of like some sort of political thing about like changing the way the rules were made for selecting public art in Chicago, because I believe that wasn't very democratic. But now that I realized, like, you know what? You don't want the public to select public art. In my opinion, it's like, we don't want the public to select public art for us. We want a very elite group of assholes to choose what they think is the most innovative public art piece they can find, because the general public is clueless about art in general. You don't want them to choose a Marilyn Monroe statue over like some weird sculptural form. So, sorry that happened to me. I want to officially apologize.
If you would have asked me that, I would have said, do you want the Nelly to be like...
I didn't know.
No, I was like,
See, I'm like supposedly some anarchist guy who cares about like what, you know, the people. And I do care about the people, but a lot of people I don't care about. You know, honestly. And then my thoughts are, like, when it comes to art, don't really want them to help me select what I like for art. Right? So that's the interesting thing about public art too, because there's notions like, well, what is a public one? But
well,
sorry,
the whole notion is like, you know, this notion that you have...
Let the experts figure it out.
Well, we have this notion it's like this public money, so...
Yeah,
the notion is like they let the public pick it.
Yeah, I know.
But, you know, it's like, that's not that cool.
Well, I wish the public would pick it over when the government gives like Boeing like $50 million in tax breaks. But that doesn't happen either. It only happens in our world, right? And besides that, Boeing's probably curator has better taste than anyways. Let's go into what you're doing now, what you're working on now, because it's pretty exciting. You've gone through this process of like, you want people to interact and experience the work in ways that you didn't even expect them to.
Well, yeah,
and now you're actually, it seems to me, programming, designing concepts for words.
I just want to control everything.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm hungry for controlling everything. You know, it's like...
Explain what that means.
You know, it's like, I just...
So if you came here, Greg's like, Juan, we love you. We want you to do something great here. Well, what are you going to do? What are you going to do for Greg? What do you want Greg to know about? You're going to do about your work.
I want to be able to like see what the resources are. You know, like, and I don't mean like money resources. I'm talking about like resources that the institution has to offer, right? In terms of like, can we create formats or connections with groups within the area to develop and create interesting objects or interesting textures. I'm thinking of the work not necessarily as this is me creating the object. It's like me creating several processes to create the object.
I'm already confused.
Good.
All right.
Yeah.
Is everyone else confused?
This is a new thing.
Someone talk to me here.
Right. This is a new thing that I'm trying out. Right.
Okay.
So like for Southern Indiana University right now.
Okay.
Right, artist in residency program. Right. They want me to come down and do a piece.
Okay.
Right. But when I'm going down there and seeing what it's like down there.
It's pretty bleak down there.
No, it's pretty amazing.
It is music?
No, it's pretty incredible.
I don't know, I never believed
There's this like, where I'm going is pretty incredible, but what's interesting is like what calls to me, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like all the things that happen or the forms that people exist, that I see them as a creative form. I can see them as a material or a process, right? For instance, for this project, I am going to utilize, right, a small barn or a shack. We don't know
barn on the campus.
Well, within the general area,
Mm-hmm.
to take all the material from there and construct this installation.
Okay.
Out of this stuff. Within the installation, there's different processes that have to exist, right? Because I realize that there's these things that exist here. Can we use water? Can we use land? Can we use processes that exist, people that do it here? Like, I'm interested in if I create them, they have an artist touch. But if I don't create them, if somebody else creates them, then it has a more genuine touch. So I'm really interested in materials, right? I'm interested in found materials for one thing, because they have a personal characteristic.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, I can't find enough found materials to give me the personal characteristic or the history.
You might have to alter them.
I have to create them. So how do I create those objects, right? By manipulating the use of these objects, of these materials, of these forms, right?
That's one way.
Well, that's one way that I'm doing this particular thing, but to me, this arbitrary. I can always change that because there are so many different processes that exist here, right? From any location and any sites.
So what do you
do that work? Everything is a very site specific.
Give me an example. What would you do?
Where?
You'll take this barn. Would you take the wood out of the barn?
I'll take the barn.
What are you going to burn the wood? What are you going to do with this wood?
Part of it is one of the we call it experiences. One of these experiences that you have to participate in. You welcome to participate. It's kind of like a party. Like a party. Like everybody comes and you burn something.
Yeah.
We're going to use the burn material to make the section.
Okay.
Right. Then the second one is like working with like the local hunting lodges.
Awesome.
So like the hunting lodges, what we're going to do is use our weapons and build something or create holes on it. So really think about
use weapons to shoot holes into objects.
Right. And the other one
like what? Rifles and shotguns?
Shotguns, rifles, whatever you want. It
like
depends.
textures.
I'm still developing these things, so I'm actually speaking.
Yeah.
Like in terms, because I'm still developing what these things will be.
I would definitely be able to shoot stuff.
And then there's the other one is the chainsaw thing that we're thinking about right now.
What the fuck is a chainsaw thing?
Well, like people make bears out of chains.
So you're like,
chainsaws, like
chainsaw is wood and ice? Like what are you talking about?
Yeah, like on wood, like whatever.
It's chainsaw sculpting.
This place that I'm going to, like they have, they built their log cabins with this beautiful formats of using hickory and using forms to cut hickory to create this beautiful wood. So why not use that as part of the element of this structure and really make something that is truly, in its true form, site-specific, right? It's not like not the specificity of this room, but the specificity of that space.
Of the culture, space, the people who work there, use stuff there. That's pretty cool. I like that.
So
that's going to be really interesting.
So that's where I'm at. Then when you say what would I do here? That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That I want to do something like that.
So you would like, what does DePaul have to offer? And I'd be like,
right.
Well, there's.
Does Brother Mark? Can Brother Mark shoot a gun?
Stephanie and
Huh?
Stephanie and shooting with artists.
Right, they are shooting.
Right.
They actually do. They'll shoot.
But they actually shoot.
Hunt.
Yeah.
Yeah. You want to use it. Who's that artist that likes to shoot stuff with shotguns?
Okay, who doesn't?
True. I mean.
I don't think you need to be an artist. I think it's just like a fun thing to do. But I don't know who that is.
Yeah. I remember you were supposed to do some branding instead of you had a fire pit developed in one of my shows.
Yeah.
We had a great show planned. And then
but,
anyways, the fire department came to put the fire out. But I was really excited about the branding. he created his own brand so you could do your own kind of art, create your own art patterns using his different brands that would be dipped into fire, and you could use this wood and create your own designs. It was really great. And this is actually something I want to talk about, I forgot about. Like, that was an object someone could take home with them.
Right.
See, Juan also was able to understand this. We even talk about whatever the market, how your career is, and how do you make money, blah, blah, blah. But one of the things is that what's interesting about you is that you'll do stuff for people to take home that's just for you to have. It's free. You also make prints. You have scalable, kind of like affordable artwork for people who are students, to people who have like interesting jobs, to collectors, right? I mean, whatever. I guess most artists do that. Do most artists do that?
I think most artists do that.
Yeah.
Like you said earlier, are you a manufacturer? Is that what you're
That's right.
asking?
Small batch manufacturing.
Small batch manufacturing.
Yeah, way into that.
Right.
So it's a small manufacturing.
So I think that's what
I love the artisanal manufacturing skills of Half Acre, who I want to plug here on this video that you'll probably store on some server somewhere. Half Acre is a great microbrewery here in Chicago. Oh, not microbrewery, still a craft brewery in Chicago that makes some great beer. And in fact, in my mind, artists are the people who can make great products. They can make anything. Like, you could make this table, you could make whatever the hell you want. You can make a line of furniture if you want. It could be a Chavez line of furniture, or light fixtures, or whatever. And that's what's interesting about you, Juan. You can basically do whatever the hell you want. That's what's fun about you.
Well, thanks, Ed.
Yeah. It's 7 o'clock, Juan. Our time is up. I don't know if you want to talk about anything else.
No, I mean, it's just, Q&A time, maybe.
Yeah, you guys want to do a question and answer part of the segment here, part of this gathering? Does anyone have any questions?
Well, in terms of a couple of points that you raised, with the public art, I think that I'm familiar with some of the pieces that you produce, like over at like 19, the Mainline Station, and a few others, and I had seen the pirate ship or whatever, the boat, the speaker box, and some of those. But the ones that are out there for the public that they just kind of happen upon, is it that you tired of the experience of producing that work, or are you tired of that installation of the work? Or
I think that, I don't know, maybe let me see if I understand it correctly. The question you said, not the work that I'm doing. Are you asking me about the work that I did on the streets on my own, as opposed to the work that I did via commission?
I guess the commission work, because that's the work that's going to have a lasting impact on people. That, I think certainly some of those pieces that are, the one at the Mainline Station, I think people live around there. They pass it every day. I think that they probably come to view that as, part of their environment.
It is. I mean, I didn't do that in any dishonest way. I didn't do that with bitterness. I did it with the full intent that people are going to enjoy it. And the pieces, don't get me wrong, the pieces is, I love the piece for what it is.
Yeah.
I just have moved on from that path of thinking. I have moved on from that way of thinking. And I think that's a very successful piece for what it is. I mean, the portraits that you see on that the mosaic is portraits of people in that community, and people that I chose to include, and I didn't choose to include any like nationalistic forms or any sort of cultural identity forms, because it's not important. You have the actual people that live there. It's what the cultural and what the the identity of that area is. We don't need to know that they're Mexican. I don't need to put the Virgin Guadalupe there. I don't need to put anything that would create a sort of identity for that space. I really just wanted to create an honest, depiction of what that is in that area. If you look at all the images within that piece, all those images are photographs of people's houses, photographs of the train stations, and collaged together with some old, signage from the streets, and it's like. And that's really what truly the piece stands out on its own for that reason. The portraits are people that maybe they'll die, and it's like that they will be they will be memorialized forever.
Were you raised north side or south side?
I'm from north side. I'm from uptown. Uptown / Amsterdam.
Could you talk about your work that's at the Warden Arboretum right now?
The piece at the Warden Arboretum, the way I categorize my work now is that I do these pieces, we call contemporary art, based on survival, any form of survival or surveillance. So the piece of the Arboretum, when they approached me to do this installation out there, I was really thinking about creating forms that embody this sort of connection to nature, and this connection to survival, and this connection to surveillance. And to me, it's a very important thing. It actually connects to the piece downstairs as well, in that sense. The piece of the Arboretum is based on cocoons. It's based on cocoons and tents, right? So it's based on the idea that you can create these structures there are for your survival, and also the structures there are for your surveillance, right? So I'm really interested in how that works within a theme, within an idea or a concept. You know, that a lot of these subjects and a lot of the manifestations of those two things are interesting. For instance, I've done work about homeless people because I find that they're very interesting in the form of survival. Right. I've also done pieces about surveillance, you know, and I think surveillance is a more established form of survival. So the piece of the Arboretum relates to those kind of things, but in a more friendlier form, you know, in the same way that I do all my works. I want people to interact with it, you know, and people to participate with the work. That's really important. So that piece is like supposed to be a giant cocoon that extends and overcompensates the branches of the tree, although I wanted it to be more elaborate, you know, I couldn't make it more elaborate at that particular time, but that's something that I would like to pursue further, because I want that, you know, I love that tension between nature, I love that tension to those materials, especially that piece is made out of lycra, so that's really important to me. I mean, lycra is such a sporting, you know, such a, you know, survivalist and fabric, you know, like you find it from any kind of fabric that you need for exploration to, you know, to working out, and so it's really kind of, everything has a very, you know, even materials that have a significance to me in that sense.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It was interesting your comment about the surveillance. There was a discussion that some people downstairs with your camera that's downstairs on your piece, and just, you know, the discussion of how many cameras are actually just in the city, and actually that more cameras are going up right now that Ron Emanuel is putting up. And I think about just on this campus, I mean, their surveillance is incredible that we live under. And it's just...
Yeah, it's really, I think Chicago has the most cameras per capita
in
the city in the U.S.
Yeah.
It's really interesting. It's like, but, you know,
second behind London.
But to me, it's surveillance becomes this, it's almost like aftermath. It's almost like you almost need the surveillance. You almost need, you know, to create this other forms of revenue. And to me, that's what the surveillance is here. It's marketed as, you know,
Managing capital, managing flows of capital.
Well, it's sold to you as this idea for safety, but it's nothing to do with safety. It's really more to do with raising funds. And how do you raise more funds? It's like, you know, and you see more cameras because of that reason. I mean, it's like, obviously, like, I always question, why does this blue light cameras have a blue light if you really wanted to control the situation?
Yeah,
You
there
know?
should be no lights.
It should be no lights. You know, why is it? It's just so interesting that you know.
Yeah, it's a marketing thing for the CPD to let you know you should feel safer.
Right.
Yeah.
So people would invest in the neighborhood once they know that a camera's there.
Well, perhaps. I mean,
Or they would know, don't move to this neighborhood. There's some bad people in the room.
Where I live now, there's this house in the corner. It's a beautiful building, and the city put this blue light right in their living room window.
I know.
And I'm like,
This
really?
happens a
Like,
lot.
how does this happen? Like, you know,
Well, we have one to have two doors down from our building.
But I mean, when you see that in your house, what a disturbance in your house.
Yeah.
I was like, I'm so fascinated by that. Like,
They're violating like their personal space,
Right.
their existence.
Right.
That was the state, man. You know, it's also for G8 coming up in May. I think, personally. Does anyone else have any questions on you? Young lady in the back corner.
I was thinking about asking you, maybe, how do you just like pursue things within your work that you're interested in? Because part of the thing in art school, I feel like we're constantly told to like be intentional about what we're doing. Like it's almost like we start thinking too much and then get wrapped up in those things, and it seems like you have a really good balance between like making conceptual work but not thinking too hard about it. Can you talk about like how, I guess, maybe your process?
Well, I think it's just, it comes within time. When you're in art school, you get a lot of shit thrown at you. A lot of information you have to filter through. I think because of my history and how I came to be an artist, I sort of developed that sort of balance that you call it, right? But I've always been a fan, and I think you've been in 2 of my classes, and you know how I interact. To me, it's really important that you learn from your work, and learning from your work means that don't get too wrapped up in what you're doing is what you're doing. You can always talk about it afterwards, but to me, it's important that that you do your thing, you learn from your work, and to start creating a sense of confidence in what you do. We all make crappy work. I still make shitty work, right? And we all do. So it's really important to think about what you're doing, and just really get involved in what you're doing, and not overthink it too much, right? It's important not to think too much about the work that you're doing, but really to get involved in the work that you're doing, because you'll learn from that, So if you get involved, and even if it's an idea, if you start questioning your ideas too much, then you're not going to be able to make anything. So don't think about so much of the ideas, and really focus on one concept. There's going to be millions of them coming, So like you think about that one, execute it and get it done. Even if it's crappy, even if it's crappy, then it's like, that you reflect on it and you say like, oh, this is not where I wanted to be. I wanted to do that. I wanted to move forward to this. I wanted to, more explore this other concept or this concept. But if you never get those, if you never execute those ideas, you're always going to be sort of filtering the ideas in your head. So you need to execute anything that comes your way. Anything that comes as a fresh idea, even if it's horrible, even if it's just executed. It needs to be executed. It cannot be just lingering on. There's so many different ways to execute those ideas, right? Some ideas just need to be executed through a sketch. Some other ideas need to be executed through an entirely overwhelming process. So it's when you do that, it's like that's when you have to decide as an artist what idea do you want to develop. Right?
That's what I mean when if you just work hard here, by living here, being an artist here, working hard means working hard at failing. Okay, you have to be a very successful failure. That's like the school I'm part of, like being a successful failure.
Right.
You know what I mean? I really embrace that. You have to fail. Nothing's going to work the first time or second time or third time. If it does, just be glad and just move on, because it's going to suck later. So just if you work hard at these iterations or different ideas that you have, and not get wrapped up like he says, like just keep moving forward. It'll help you in the process. It'll help you develop as an artist or whatever you want to be, entrepreneur, business owner, whatever the hell you're doing. It doesn't matter. But you have to produce the work. You cannot talk. You have to make the work. That's really important. Am I right? Am I right about that?
You're right. I mean, I'm going to share something with you that I consider myself a fan, right? I was asked to present to the Whitney, right? And I was kind of overwhelmed at the time to present to the Whitney. And I presented a really half-assed presentation. It didn't represent the work that I did well. It did not do anything, and it made me feel like shit, right? And I walked around, I hung my head, and I'm just like, this is a great opportunity for my career. If I would have gotten this well, it would just open up so many doors, right? So, and it bothered me for several years. I couldn't think of anything to do. I couldn't think of a project to do to get me to feel in the confidence way that I felt before, right? Until the point that I stopped caring. I started thinking too much about why I didn't get that, why I didn't go there, why I dropped the ball, why it was like constantly going forward, in my mind going around in circles, to the point that back to the way that I think, it's just like that wasn't important. It was important, but is not important for me to dwell on. It's important for me to move forward and to really think about the process of the work and to really get involved in my work and the work that I'm trying to do and the impact that I'm trying to create with the work and the visual impact that it will generate and the impact that it creates in general when the work is perceived. So forget all that, you know?
Yeah.
There's other opportunities, there's other places. You know, the Whitney is not the only place I could show it, you know? But it was something that was very personal to me in this trajectory of gain that I felt, you know? And it's like, it's saying one of the things that that we said in skateboarding, you know? I fell all the time, but it only fell when your confidence level got really high. When you think you can do anything and you don't. And that's when it hurts the most, right? So this happens, you know, it's a natural thing.
That should be in some monograph for skateboarding. Yeah, but Juan's absolutely right. Obviously, I feel so.
I have a question for you.
What's that, baby?
Why did you choose me? Out of all the artists that you know, all the artists that you work with,
You know, it's an interesting question, Juan.
why me?
I don't know why. I honestly don't. I was thinking about, like, you're right, out of everyone I know.
Yeah, all these cool people that you met, all
Yeah,
these
because
people that do
right,
this
I know
shit.
everyone does there's a lot of people out there doing great work. Because Juan, you actually do, because you represent this kind of notion to me of Chicago school, where you do whatever the heck you want. You actually make whatever you want. You do whatever you want, and your approaches towards making work to me represent the finest qualities of an artist in this town. So that's why.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, I know everybody. I just know people that big.
Right.
But yeah, that's why.
Feel honored.
Because
Thanks.
you represent what the Chicago artist is to me. You are,
Thanks.
to me, what represents the best qualities and the worst. Chicago artist.
Thanks.
You're
I like
welcome.
where you have to throw in the words. Otherwise,
Yeah,
I feel like
Don't want to get a little total like that, promise. But yeah, I
I'd be
mean,
in the worst way.
I know. Well, sometimes we all are. Right? That's the thing. So, but yeah, I thanks for this opportunity, Greg, as well, for letting us actually have this show, this fantastic survey of work from Chicago artists.
Thanks for participating.
This curator over here.
And of course, thank you so much. Oh gosh, your hair changed. I didn't even recognize you. Sorry about that. Plus, I'm losing my sight on these. I need a new prescription. But it's good to see you too. And thank you for putting this whole facility. To me, represents a great piece of like a great situation for this neighborhood. This was a dead neighborhood, a dying neighborhood in my mind. So you help rejuvenate by putting a kind of cultural center here that will help rejuvenate people's sense of what it means to be a citizen, right? So I've heard about this cultural corridor here. It's going to be great. It'll maintain this neighborhood. It'll make it actually viable in my mind, at least. I'll be back, and I think it's fantastic. And DePaul actually has one of the best kind of art education kind of departments I've ever experienced anywhere, and that's really great too. So DePaul is actually kicking ass and playing a major role. They've always played a major role in this neighborhood, but I think their footprint, at least in my universe, is bigger than it usually has been. So that's been nice too. But this facility is unbelievably insane. Insanely beautiful.
Great.
Yeah. I hope some of you kids here show in this space someday. All right? Will you work hard? Will you promise me that, guys? All right. All right.
Is there any last questions or other questions?
I have a question. It's a bit broad. Just, I think of you both as being very like outspoken. Like I never wonder if what you're saying matches up to what you're thinking. And then the way you talked about, like Juan being someone who does what he wants. Like, how do you feel? You said that this is like a mark of being a Chicago artist, a real Chicago artist. But could you guys just like dig into that a little bit more, like that sort of straightforward aspect, or like just really like?
I have no idea what that means.
Okay.
Like, I have no idea what Chicago artist
I know what it means.
You might know more than I do. 'Cause I have no idea what that means.
When you're moving to New York, it means that you better be famous. You want to make it there. You want to make some money. You want to be someone. And you're making work that you're choosing to make work that fits within some sort of trend, or that fits within some of the parameters of what someone else thinks you need to do to make it. When you go to these hyper-realized markets, it means that you want to be a player. And it's no longer your ideas. It's your ideas that you think will work with those people who collect you and do things for you. That's what I mean by that. There's a freedom here to do what you want to do, untainted by the market or whatever, any funding from the state and from capital. You know what I mean? That's what I truly mean by that. And I think if you work hard here, and you work with people, and have a network of people that you work with, you can engage and create whatever you want here. Anything you want here can be done in this city, because there's plenty of rooms, there's plenty of neighborhoods and pockets of the city in which you can have a large, gigantic space to have like whatever you want. Studio space, a collective space, a shared art space, a business, whatever you want to do, you can do. In a market like New York, maybe you could go to like whatever, the 50th train stop line off in Brooklyn, past Greenpoint or whatever. Like who gives a shit? Places in New York where New York is the ideal, I mean it's great, it is the universe, it is the entire world comes to New York. But it also is just one type there's mostly one type of person in New York who can do what they want. And those are the children of the very wealthy. And those people aren't necessarily very creative, they just have a lot of money. So if you work here and do whatever you want, you theoretically could move to New York and actually be a badass if you meet those children of the wealthy who can help fund your projects. You know what I mean? You have as much a hard time funding your projects here as you will in any other city. So if you find your funding here, you'll find it anywhere. You know what I mean? And like, you know, if you're able to do good work here, like Chicago is, like I said, the capital of a style of work here, you'll be able to network with people internationally and go all over the world. In fact, the most important thing for Chicago artists to do is to have residencies abroad, is to study abroad, is to work abroad. The most important thing for Chicago right now is to bring the best artists from other countries here, not just for a weekend show, but for months at a time to learn about how amazing Chicago is. You know what I mean? Like, what we have to work on as a city is to create more spaces that actually embrace contemporary forms of practice and actually work with people who are the best globally. Like, we already have awesome people here. We need to pair them up with people who are amazing elsewhere, so that those people elsewhere will collaborate with our Chicago artists. And those Chicago artists will go to different cities and create this kind of exchange where, you know, we could share and collectively benefit from whatever is happening in whatever market. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like historically, what's happened? A group of artists will kick ass somewhere geographically. One guy will be the fucking baller. One guy will be the guy who makes it all happen for the rest of that group. He'll drag every one of his friends, kicking and screaming, into this new world of making some money briefly for some period of time. He may continue to make big money after his death or whatever, and his friends have an opportunity to make a career out of making work. You know, really, this art world, this notion of being a famous artist, is a fantasy. It is a lottery ticket. People just need to know that they create their own art worlds, they create their own markets, create their own networks. They have to live. If you're an artist, you have to live as an artist. You have to live and be an artist. And you do that by creating. You know what I mean? And that's what it means. You have time to create here. You don't have to have 10 jobs if you're a poor artist in New York. Do being a graphic designer, waiting tables, whatever, selling cocaine. Instead, unless you're really wealthy, if you're really wealthy, then you better learn how to be a good artist. And you can be able to compete better, and you'll be able to sell more work to your parents' friends on their networks. You know what I mean? Like there's different ways of positioning yourself depending on where you're at. That's why I think in Chicago, in general, you have an open playing field. There's no disadvantages here. You can make whatever you want happen here. That's why I believe that.
And I think that it's like you're connecting the connection of the sort of freedom of speech, really, or like uncensored speech, with a sort of capital flexibility or like an economic flexibility.
Right. It's very important. It's super important. Otherwise, we're all, you know, for everybody, no matter what you're doing.
That's why I like what you said earlier, like small manufacturing groups.
Right.
I mean, even what we do, everything that we do, even if it's art, you know, to think about it in a manufacturing point of view is really interesting.
I was just wondering, now, what's your relationship to New York? As you've spoken repeatedly about New York and
I love New York. It's a beautiful city to visit.
Amazing.
Oh, you're looking at me.
Okay,
no, for me, I mean, New York's been very good to me in the sense that, you know, I haven't really fully explored it in its full potential, but, you know, I had some great dealings with galleries and people in New York, and, you know, I love it. I love the energy of the city. I just can never live it. You know, it's just too much for my brain in terms of, you know, I love visiting. It's like you say, it's a good place to visit. It's a great place to be there for a week, maybe 2 weeks. Maybe, you know, I could probably stand a month there. You know.
Do you have representation there?
I don't. I deal with the gallery there on and off in specific projects, but I never had a show in New York. I had shows. No, I take that back. I have had shows in New York, but I never really felt that they were like, you know, really involved shows. So I deal with people in New York, you know, all the time, but I use them, you know, in a different
So
format.
how do you, I mean, aside from the installations, how do you present your smaller works to the public?
To me, you know, with the idea, my smaller works, with the idea of my work being this experience, you know, I started sort of creating a product, you know, that resembles my work, but at the same time that it creates some sort of resemblance to a memento, like kind of like a shipping bottle. To me, it's sort of like, you know, how do you translate these large installations to this formula that a collector can have, right? And it's everything is like a, you know, problem solving situation. When I started dealing with Linda, and then we came with this conclusion: you work so large, so fast. There's so much information going on. How do we sell it? You know, and I started thinking, like, you know, let's make these things. The very, you know, decision making was very abrupt when I said, like, let's make these things where I just make ship in a bottle type formats. You know, where I create these objects that you can take away. They're almost like a model of my larger projects, but they're also individual forms, individual, you know, they carry you out as an experience. Because that's really important to me, you know, that you take away an experience. And now, recently, which I've been kind of against for a while, but I've been finally convinced that I need to start selling my models, because I'm accumulating so many models for my projects, right? That we need to start figuring out how to sell them and how to create these projects. Because essentially it's the same thing. Even if you buy a small piece of mine that is, you know, 24 inches by 10 inches wide, that object, you know, is not meant to be a gigantic object, but it could be constructed, you know, because I make them in that sense. To me, you know, the scale shift and difference doesn't matter. Like, it's something small. This is, you know, the same as something larger.
Do you think of those as sketches or studies for the larger pieces?
There's that version of the work, which are my model version, right? And then I have the other work that I do when I have exhibitions, and most of them is variations of objects for the gallery. This is a whole different. It's a whole different. You know, what is that? What is that expression? Cat and dog show is the pony.
Dog and pony show.
Dog and pony show. It's a whole different thing, but you know. But I like to have some connection to the work, you know, to the same. Because to me, the larger installations is really what my work is. But you know, we have to be realistic. Who can afford or who can house this giant installations, right?
You're bringing up an interesting topic. Then, what's the collector's market?
Well, there is a collector. There has to be, but it's like, you know, I'm not going to be blinded by it. It said, like, the truth of the work is that the work is large. I mean, the work is large, but I view that work as an installation, site-specific installation. I don't view it as, although it can be.
Juan has so much work that those pieces, these sculptural pieces, are a very small percentage of what his body of work is. If you were to go to Juan's studio, you would shake your pants. There's so many works there, so beautiful.
Well,
It's
that's
just
a toilet,
delightful.
so you don't have to shake your pants.
I mean, it's so great. There's so many pieces I'd like to have someday, Juan. I know that I can't afford. Maybe one day when I start marketing the army, I'll be able to purchase stuff. I'll be one of your first patrons.
Good. I would love that. You already have some of my pieces, by the way.
I know that, but I'm saying about that one piece number one.
I know which one you want.
Yeah, I know.
What do the one that everybody wants?
Yeah. You can't get that one ever. You can't sell that piece ever.
Yeah.
Leave it for your kids.